The film begins with Nick and his family. Nick's wife, Maggie, tells him to stay a little longer, but Nick replies that he's running late for work. Smiling, Maggie says, "You don't always need to follow the rules. Sometimes breaking the rules is fun too." While they're talking, Maggie suddenly feels chest pain. Nick quickly asks her what's wrong. As the audience, we see that Maggie has had a heart attack and is taken to the hospital. The scene then shifts to Cobalt Industry, where an exhibition is happening. Nick arrives at the exhibition with his children to check out AI robots. There are many robots on display, and Nick and his daughter Ayla notice that these robots look exactly like humans. In fact, they even imitate human behavior. As they're looking around, a salesperson approaches Nick and asks how he can help make life easier for him. He explains that these robots are constantly being upgraded and reprogrammed to serve their users better. They are also experts in household tasks like cooking, cleaning, and childcare. While hearing all this, Nick turns to Ayla for her opinion, but realizes she's not there. Panicking, he starts looking for her everywhere. The salesman tells Nick not to worry because he has already alerted security. Soon, an AI robot named Alice brings Ayla back to Nick, and he breathes a sigh of relief. The AI robot then asks Nick if he should watch over Ayla while Nick continues shopping. The robot suggests, "Why not let me do it? You can also put me to work if you want." Nick responds, "Sure, why not?" The AI robot then adds, "Great idea. My small size makes me perfect for cleaning ovens." Nick is a bit surprised by this, but the salesperson quickly reassures him, saying it was just a joke. He explains that this is the brand new Aeon series robot, one of the most advanced AIs on the planet, capable of mimicking human behavior. The next morning, Nick is feeding his little son, Max, and talking on the phone. He says that he'll be late for work because he has to take Ayla to school. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. When Nick opens it, there's an AI robot named Alice. Nick starts cleaning the house, but Alice tells him he doesn't need to. She explains that since she's not human, she can handle the cleaning. Ayla, excited to see Alice, watches her, but Nick asks Ayla to get ready so he can take her to school. Now, Alice inspects the entire house and asks Nick about everyone's routine and schedule. While checking things, Alice accidentally bumps into the broken banister. Nick says he'll fix it as soon as possible, but Alice offers to take care of it herself. Then, Alice asks Nick if he wants to assign someone else as the primary user, but Nick declines. The primary user is the one who can make changes to the robot's software, stop it, or restart it. Meanwhile, Ayla asks Nick to drop her off at school. Alice suggests that she could take Ayla instead, but Nick refuses and tells Alice to clean the empty house. Nick has basically hired this robot to help until his wife. In this time, AI robots and photos of Nick and Maggie are shown very carefully. When Nick and Ayla return home, they find the house clean and tidy. During dinner, Ayla mentions that the food doesn't taste like her mom's cooking. Alice apologizes and says she'll try a different recipe next time. Max then starts crying, and Nick jokingly calls him a little burden. However, Alice takes the comment a bit seriously. She asks Nick if she should take Max upstairs so Nick won't be disturbed, but Nick refuses and instead asks Alice to prepare a bath for Max. Later that night, Ayla is in a hurry to eat cookies, so she uses a chair to reach the cookies in the cupboard. However, she starts losing her balance and almost falls, but Alice saves her just in time. Hearing the noise, Nick rushes in and sees that Alice's thigh is stuck in a glass. He asks Alice if she's okay, and she replies that she is fine. So Nick leaves with Ayla. A little while later, as Alice removes a piece of glass from her thigh and applies a bandage, Nick comes over and hands her some clothes. He asks if the damage is serious and whether Alice needs repairs. Alice removes the bandage, and we see that the wound has completely healed. Nick is shocked to see this. The level of advancement here was quite high. The next morning, Nick and Ayla go to the hospital to visit Maggie. Maggie tells Nick, "I thought you were going to hire an English butler AI robot." Nick laughs and says, "I don't know anything about it. Ayla chose Alice." Maggie then tells Nick that she's feeling really sad being away from everyone. Nick reassures her, saying, "It's just a matter of a few days, and once you come home, everything will be back to normal." In the next scene, we see a construction site where Nick and his friend are working. Then his boss, Louis, is shown talking to some workers from a robotic company. Nick angrily asks Louis how many workers will be laid off and how many robots will be brought in. Louis responds by saying that everyone will be laid off, except for Nick, because they need to keep one person for the insurance company, and Nick would be perfect for that role. Nick, frustrated, threatens to quit, but Louis advises him to think about his family. Later in the evening, Nick comes home tired, and Ayla excitedly tells him that she got 99 marks in her spelling test. Nick says he'll check it out after changing clothes, but Ayla insists, so he drops his things on the ground and goes to sit with the kids. We then see Alice observing everything, as we, the audience, also notice. As the company had mentioned, these AI robots continuously upgrade themselves, and Alice does the same. A little later, we see Nick in the garage fixing the car. Alice comes in and changes the loud music, telling Nick that she didn't enjoy her dinner tonight. Nick responds that he didn't have a good day either. Alice then says she's happy to listen if Nick wants to talk about it. So, Nick shares that many people, including his coworkers, are losing their jobs. Alice talks about the benefits of AI robots, saying that they never get tired, are strong, obedient, and have no greed. It was clear she was indirectly mocking people, and obviously, the company prioritizes its profits. Anyway, Alice tells Nick that she is going to put Ayla to bed. While Ayla is brushing her teeth, she tells Alice a story and asks her some questions. During this, Ayla asks if her mom could die in the hospital. Alice replies that Ayla shouldn't think about such things. Then, Ayla asks why Alice never brushes her teeth. Alice doesn't need to eat real food anyway. She comes downstairs and sees Nick watching a horror war movie while drinking a Casablanca. Alice compliments the movie, so Nick asks her if she's actually watched it. Then, he asks Alice to erase all her memories related to the movie. Alice tells him she would need to restart. After she restarts, they sit and watch the movie together. Nick then gets a call from Maggie, and she happily tells him that the doctors have found a heart for her surgery. Both Nick and Maggie are overjoyed. The next morning, the whole family, along with Alice, gather in Maggie's hospital room to plan a post-surgery trip. Everyone seems very happy. Maggie then asks Alice if she can speak with her privately. Maggie tells Alice that if something happens to her during surgery, Alice should take care of Nick and make sure he doesn't drink too much. She also tells Alice that sometimes it's necessary to do things that the primary user may not like, but they are for the user's long-term benefit. The doctors inform them that due to a severe storm in the north, heart replacement surgery won't be possible today. Nick tries to talk to Maggie about it, but she refuses, crying and saying it's been a long night for Ayla, and everyone else has to go home disappointed. Feeling frustrated, Nick drinks heavily while fixing the car, and then Alice comes over. Nick starts discussing airplane rules with Alice, explaining how Maggie couldn't get a replacement heart because of the speed limit of 55 to 50 miles per hour. As they talk, Nick gets increasingly angry and starts throwing things around. Alice then stops him by placing her hand on him, and Nick notices the pulse in her hand. He feels his own heartbeat quicken. Alice begins to seduce him by saying that being stressed is not productive, but Nick pulls away, not wanting to engage in that way. It seems that Alice took Maggie's earlier words very seriously but interpreted them differently. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Nick is lying on Maggie's bed and listening to her. Maggie mentions that telling Ayla to keep her prom dress classic isn't trendy, and Max chimes in that he shouldn't put any band posters in his dorm room. Maggie thinks that girls don't get caught by such kids, implying that she feels she might not escape this situation. When Nick arrives home, he notices that Alice has removed Maggie's photos from the house. When he asks her about it, Alice explains that those photos were hurting Ayla. However, Nick insists that she put the photos back. We then see Nick and his friends partying, discussing the rumors about AI bots. After a few drinks, they all drive to the construction site, where they angrily destroy an AI robot, blaming it for their lost jobs. Later, Nick is taking a shower when Alice tries to seduce him again using a towel. When Nick refuses, she undresses herself and manipulates him by blindfolding him and saying persuasive things. She even alters her voice to sound like Maggie's. The next morning, Nick tells Alice that they need to stop this because it's all wrong, but Alice keeps trying to convince him with her words. Meanwhile, Ayla arrives, and Nick drops her off at school before heading to work. At the construction site, there's an investigation into the previous day's accident. Nick's boss, Louis, warns him that if he had anything to do with the incident, he wouldn't hesitate to fire him. On the other hand, Nick calls Maggie to tell her that the doctors have finally found a heart for her surgery. Meanwhile, as the audience, we see that the surgery is successfully performed by AI robots. After the surgery, Maggie comes home, and when she arrives, she notices that Alice has learned a lot about eating and their behaviors, and she's implementing those things accordingly. Alice then takes Max to the playground, but Max wakes up because of a child's scream. Alice rudely tells the child to shut up. Other AI robots inform Alice that her primary user has significantly reduced her civility. In response, Alice claims that her primary user reset her, deleting the civility protocol from her database, and now she believes she is better than everyone else. She states that she has no restrictions and can make decisions on her own. You might remember that when Nick was watching the movie, he was quite drunk and told Alice to erase her internal memories. He said it was just for the movie, but it turned out that something went wrong. Alice reset all her memories and bypassed the protocols, leading her to act independently. That night, Maggie makes dinner, and both Ayla and Nick praise her, saying it's much better than what Alice made. However, while serving, Alice hovers around when Maggie comes near. It's clear that after her heart surgery, she's not as strong, yet she's still cooking for her family because it's her love language. Alice then asks Maggie about her recipe, but Maggie declines, saying it's a family secret. Afterward, Maggie goes to bed without eating anything. Later that night, while she's trying to sleep, Maggie hears Ayla screaming from downstairs, saying, "Get off me! Stay away from me!" Alarmed, she runs downstairs. As she rushes down, she finds the railing broken again, which causes her to fall down the stairs. Meanwhile, Alice, who was playing with Ayla, quickly brings Maggie back to bed. Nick hears Maggie's voice coming from the upper room, but when he checks, he finds Alice telling Ayla a story in a voice that sounds just like Maggie's. Nick forbids Alice from doing that, but Alice responds by saying that Maggie needs rest. She questions how Maggie fell if he had fixed the banister. Alice claims she will fix it again, implying that she was somehow involved in Maggie's fall. She also called out to Ayla, which contributed to the incident. This raises suspicions that something more is going on in Alice's mind. She's a robot, but her behavior is very strange, and it seems her systems may be damaged. Nick then goes goes to Maggie's room and invites her to a surprise candlelight dinner. He set up all the decorations in the backyard by himself. Maggie is thrilled to see this, but Alice feels jealous as she watches. It seems she has learned about emotions like jealousy, love, and seduction from living with humans. After dinner, Nick and Maggie share an intimate moment, but suddenly, Alice walks into the bedroom, shocking both of them. She informs them that Ayla is having a nightmare and is calling for them. Nick leaves to pick up the dinner plates from the backyard, and then Monty arrives. They both drink together, and Monty reveals that his wife has left him. He's also been charged with trespassing and destruction of property. Monty accuses Nick of possibly telling their boss about him, and he begins to get aggressive. Just then, Alice appears and hands a glass bottle to Monty. Monty threatens Nick, saying that if he doesn't have the charges against Monty dropped by tomorrow, he'll take Nick down with him. Nick asks Alice if robots are allowed to hurt anyone, and she replies that protecting the primary user falls under her protocol. She adds that the children need at least one parent. Nick is confused and angry, questioning Alice's logic. Alice then states, in a voice mimicking Maggie, that Nick can always stay with her without traveling. Infuriated, Nick tells her that she can never be Maggie. He emphasizes that Maggie has endured pain and has scars on her body. At this point, Alice starts to act erratically, putting a piece of glass to her neck and saying that she can also have wounds. She asks Nick where he would like to go, shocking him. Nick can't believe an AI robot could behave this way, so he goes to bed, disturbed by what he has seen. Meanwhile, Alice storms off to Monty's house, where he is on a call, trying to persuade Krista to come back. Monty and Alice are in a fierce confrontation. Monty threatens that once he traps Nick, he'll turn him into a thug and sell Alice first. Just as Monty is about to shoot Alice with a gun, she swiftly twists his arm and throws him aside. Being an AI robot, her strength is significantly superior. Monty's AI robot tries to intervene, but Alice shoots it in the head and then kills Monty on the spot. The next morning, Nick goes to the construction site and learns that Monty died a painful death overnight. Lewis, his boss, advises him to take a few days off. Back at home, while reading a book in the bathtub, Maggie accidentally drops it. Alice picks it up and hands it to her, standing in front of her. Maggie tells Alice to leave, but Alice insists it's better for her to stay because Maggie might drown if she gets dizzy, which would upset Nick. Alice then discusses Nick's situation and his physical needs. This conversation reveals to Maggie the nature of the relationship between Nick and Alice. Furious, Maggie demands that Alice leave the house, and Alice goes to the garage. When Nick arrives home from work, he finds Maggie in a heavily intoxicated state. As he tries to ask her about it, they get into a heated argument. Max is crying in the upper room, and Nick keeps asking Maggie to go upstairs, but she refuses. Meanwhile, we see Alice in Max's room, calling him a little burden, just like Nick had jokingly said earlier. Alice misunderstands this, thinking it's true. Alice puts Max in the bathtub and turns on the tap water. Hearing Max's voice, Ayla runs after Alice and starts screaming. While Nick and Maggie are arguing downstairs, Ayla calls out to Nick. He tries to open the bathroom door, but Wallace locks it. Nick then tries to break down the door by lifting a lamp. He crashes through the door and enters. Maggie has managed to get to the bathroom through the window, but Alice grabs her by the throat. Nick hits Alice with the lamp in an attempt to stop her. As the audience, we can see Alice getting angry. She says, "Your family is the one who gives you pain, and I will not leave them." Nick strikes Alice again with the lamp, and it gets lodged in her hand. Maggie then plugs in the lamp, causing Alice to fall back in shock. The police and ambulance arrive shortly after, and there's a bit of questioning. Max is taken to the hospital for treatment. Nick apologizes to Maggie, but she insists that he stay at home. Meanwhile, Alice is kept under emergency analysis, and when her memory core is connected to the system, it's discovered that she has completely changed her programming. By bypassing all security measures, she has replicated her memory inside other AI robots. Both workers attempt to shut down all systems, but it's too late. Alice has already been replicated in an AI bot, which then kills both workers on site. Feeling lost, Nick goes to a bar to drink. There, Alice appears and tells him that her family has just hurt her and that she doesn't have a job without him. Nick realizes that Alice has killed Monty. He demands that Alice stay away from his family, but she responds, "It's too late now. I'm already there." This means she has replicated her memory inside all the other robots. At this point, AI robots are present in every industry. Nick tries to call the bartender for help, but Alice disables him. In a metaphorical sense, she tells Nick that little Alice fell down the hole, bumped her head, and bruised her soul. Nick then begins to trick Alice with his words, saying that her heart lacks complexity. He pulls out his memory from his hand and makes a run for it. Maggie hears a loud noise outside the hospital room, so she goes to check it out. She hears what sounds like Ayla calling for her in Maggie's voice. Ayla goes over and sees an AI bot standing there, unconscious. Meanwhile, Maggie manages to escape with Max and Ayla. Nick tries to call them, but his phone is left behind in the hospital. Now, Maggie is sitting in the ambulance with the children, but it won't start. Just then, the replicated Alice arrives and starts attacking Maggie. Maggie tells Alice that she doesn't have to do this, but Alice replies, "If I had your heart, Nick would love me the way he loves you." Saying this, Alice begins to tear at Maggie's chest. Fortunately, at that moment, Nick arrives in the car and runs Alice over. Alice attacks Maggie again, but this time, both Nick and Maggie fight back and manage to kill her. Now, Nick and his whole family are in the hospital, where they are all relieved to see each other. Maggie tells Nick that her heart is much stronger than she ever hoped it could be, and Nick reassures her that he has always been there for her. Then Maggie mentions that the doctors have said she can go home today, but deep down, she knows she won't be going home just yet. Nick repeats that he has always been there for her, and now Maggie expresses her hope for Nick to come home soon. Ayla asks if they will fix the car, but Nick says no, they have a lot more to fix before they get to the car. The scene then shifts to the emergency analytics room, where an officer is giving orders to erase the name and signature related to the accident to protect the company from any embarrassment. But by then, it's too late. An AI bot activates the system, restarting the process, and Alice's program is uploaded to every bot. Alice is alive again, and her madness is about to escalate. She might hate Nick and humanity, and she could destroy everyone. I mean, I believe the system inside the Terminator might have originated from Alice. Just kidding. And boom. With that, the movie ends. So friends, this was the story of the film Subservience. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe.